Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging's virtual caregiver education program, Boundaries in Caregiving, Preventing and Avoiding the Martyr Syndrome. Before we begin, I'd like to ask that if you have questions, please use the chat box on your screen. Just type in your question, and at the end, our presenter Jennifer will address as many of your questions as possible. Today's presentation will be recorded. If you would like the link to the recording, or if you have any questions following the presentation, please send an email to aaa.support@loudoun.gov. I will drop that email in the chat once our program begins. Finally, if you need support for you or your loved one, the Loudoun County AAA has case management services, adult day centers, senior centers, home delivered meals, Medicare counseling, and caregiver services, including support groups, as well as many other programs. Please do not hesitate to reach out. The Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging staff are here for you as you navigate your caregiving journey. And now allow me to introduce today's webinar leader, Jennifer FitzPatrick. Are you a stressed out caregiver who has little time for anything but caring for your loved one? Are you physically and/or mentally exhausted? Are you excited about the idea of getting a free copy of Cruising Through Caregiving, courtesy through Brightview Senior Living? If you answered yes to any of these questions, this virtual event was created for you. Our presenter today is the author of Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One, and a longtime gerontology instructor at Johns Hopkins University's Center on Aging program. She is one of less than 800 certified speaking professionals worldwide and has been featured in national media such as the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, SiriusXM, CBS, ABC, and many more. When she's not working, she spends her time as a below average first mate on her boat. Please join me in welcoming from Kent Island, Maryland, Jennifer L. FitzPatrick, MSW, LCSWC, CSP.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're taking some time in the middle of the day to talk to us about boundaries and how to avoid the martyr syndrome. And as Kristen mentioned, please feel free to write in your comments, questions. This hour is all about you. And Kristen did put in the chat section to get your free copy of Cruising Through Caregiving, courtesy of Brightview Senior Living. She'll put that in the chat a couple of different times. So hopefully you'll click on that. You'll be able to get your free copy of the book. So do you consider yourself to be a totally selfless caregiver? Or has somebody ever said, wow, you're really selfless? Or maybe there's somebody in your life that you know you would describe as a totally selfless caregiver. Well, if that is the case, I want that person, whoever it is, whether it's you or somebody else in your life, I want you to stop being a totally selfless caregiver. When you are completely selfless, you are not the best caregiver you think you are. Now, some people might take issue with that and say, what are you talking about, Jennifer? If you're really selfless, that means that you're dedicated, you're devoted, everything is about the loved one. But the problem with this is if you don't take care of your needs, you are not effective. You are not doing your loved one the best service possible. And so my goal for everybody today is for you to think about how can you become a little less selfless. So I want to invite you to start out on a scale of 0 to 10, and 0 being you are very, very, very selfish caregiver. You don't do anything for your loved one. And then 10, you're completely selfless. You don't think about anything but caregiving. I want you to write in the chat section, what score would you give yourself? So I'm going to give everybody a minute to write in. And remember, 0 is you're very selfish. You don't care at all about your loved one. And 10 being you're the most selfless. You do everything for the person you love. All right, so we got a 5, an 8, a 6, an 8, 7, 8. We got a couple people saying 7 or 8. So a lot of people are saying 7, 6, 7, giving yourself a range. Okay, so what we want, in my opinion, is I want everybody to be more around a 5, that you care a lot and you're very devoted to your loved one, but that you also care about yourself. So if you are above a 5, I want the goal of today is to be you thinking about, what can I do to be a little bit more selfish, a little bit more self-centered, where I actually take the time to think about what will refresh me, what will renew me. And that ultimately is going to benefit whoever you're caring for, whether it's your mom, whether it's your husband, whether it's a friend, whoever it is that you care about. So signs of the Martyr syndrome can be physical, they can be emotional, psychological, spiritual, they can be social. I think a lot of people get that Martyr syndrome when you're too selfless is physical. Maybe you're having headaches, maybe your stomach's bugging you. I think a lot of people even understand, okay, psychological, you feel very anxious or worried or nervous a lot, or you feel very down in the dumps. But I don't know that a lot of people give too much thought about their spiritual signs of Martyr syndrome or their social signs of Martyr syndrome, which we'll talk about during this hour. Also, relationships. When your relationships, your friendships, your family relationships outside of that one person that you're caring for are negatively impacted, that also can be a sign of Martyr syndrome. And I think people generally tend to understand the financial component. Most people understand, yeah, if I'm putting all my money toward my loved one, then I'm in Martyr syndrome. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. In fact, there was a really terrific article in the Wall Street Journal a couple days ago, and it has to do with AARP's Amy Goyer, who took care of both of her parents, and she talked about her financial struggles, and that she, being a caregiving expert, has even written a book about caregiving, which is quite good. She found herself having to declare bankruptcy after caring for her parents. And I would say from Amy's story that those financial signs were a sign that Amy was being too selfless. So feel free to Google that if you want to check it out. Amy Goyer in the Wall Street Journal was a couple days ago. So today is not just about you, are you too selfless, but it's also about, is there another member of your caregiving crew who's too selfless? So in my book, Cruising Through Caregiving, which again, you can get completely for free, mailed to your home, courtesy of Bravely Senior Living. And I know Kristen will keep putting that in the chat section in case you'd like to just click on it and you get that free copy sent to your home. But in Cruising Through Caregiving, I talk about the concept of people should never be a caregiver alone. And most caregiving experts will say that, but I liken it to being a captain on a ship. And the person who is in charge, I call that person the primary caregiver or the captain of the ship. And then what we want ideally is for there to be lots of first mates and dock hands helping that captain. So you might not, maybe you're a first mate, or maybe you're a dock hand in the caregiving scenario. Maybe you're observing that the captain, who is maybe the spouse or the adult child that does most of the work, is in Martyr syndrome too. So this is not just about you necessarily. It might be somebody else in your caregiving crew. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do an exercise from Cruising Through Caregiving. And this exercise is in the book. And I also want to let everybody know that you can download all the exercises if you want hard copies of these exercises. If you go to cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, you can print them out. You can share them with people in your caregiving crew. You can print them out anytime, make photocopies. We're going to run through this exercise in real time. And so if you are saying to yourself, I'm a 5 or lower, I am not too selfless. I'm in the middle. I care deeply about my loved one, but I also do take care of myself. If you're a 5 or lower, it might not be that you need to do this exercise, although you certainly can. You're very welcome to. But also, if you feel like, all right, I'm in pretty good shape, but I'm worried about somebody in our caregiving crew. Maybe it's you have a sister and both of you are taking care of dad, and you're worried about your sister. You think she might be a little too selfless. Maybe do it with her in mind. So you can choose whether you want to do it for yourself, this quiz, or you want to do it for somebody you love. So I want you to make 2 columns on a piece of paper. I'm going to give everybody a couple moments to make a piece of paper, grab a pen, or maybe open up a Word document on your computer. So I'm going to give everybody a couple moments to do that. Okay, hopefully everybody's got it. So you can pull out a Word doc on your computer or a piece of paper and a pen. And what I want you to do is I want you to have 1 column, column 1, maybe on your left-hand side, is you're going to use that to put X's down. And then the second column, you're going to either put letters or symbols for each question. So everybody ready? Anybody need more time? If you need more time to get your materials together, let me know. Right in the chat section, time, just put time if you need more time, but otherwise we're going to jump in and get started on the exercise. So again, on the left side, if you have experienced stomach aches in the last 6 months or so, I want you to put an X on the left side and a P on the right-hand side. Stomach ache. Don't think too hard about it, just yes or no. Put an X if you have, and then a P. And if not, then put nothing down on your piece of paper. Have you experienced any estrangements or tensions with your family since caregiving for this loved one began? And again, if you say, yeah, I have, put an X on the left-hand side and an R in the second column. Unexplained weight change, unplanned weight change. Now, if you're saying to yourself, I want it to lose a little weight, or I want it to gain a little weight for whatever reason, health-wise, then don't have to check this one off. But if it wasn't really planned, you've gained some weight, you've lost some weight, you didn't really plan it, I want you to put an X on the left and a P on the right. Next one, feeling more anxious, restless, or nervous than usual. Left, put an X if you feel this way in the last 6 months or so, and then an M on the right-hand side. Increased use of alcohol or recreational drugs or street drugs. I want you to put an M on the right-hand side and an X on the left. And if this doesn't apply to you in the last 6 months, then don't put anything down. Increased use of prescription drugs to counter anxiety, sleep aids, but you've upped it. You've upped your usage. So again, I want you to put an M on the right and an X on the left if this applies to you in the last 6 months or so. If you've been experiencing more headaches, migraines, or just tension headaches in the last 6 months or so, left, you want to put an X, right, you want to put a P, if this applies to you. Sleep problems. And this could mean all kinds of things. This could mean you're sleeping not enough. It could mean you're sleeping too much. It could mean that you're waking up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep and it's upsetting to you. And when I say that, if you're like, oh, it's all right, I wake up for a little bit and I watch a little TV and it's not bothering me, or I read a little bit and it's fine. But if you feel that your sleep is problematic for some reason, you want to put a P on the right-hand side and an X on the left for about the last 6 months or so. Exhaustion and fatigue. If you feel like, oh, I'm so tired, a lot. I feel exhausted a lot. Not just when you had a particularly busy day, but it's just how you've been feeling most of the time for the last 6 months. I want you to put a P on the right, and on the left, I want you to put an X. More aches and pains. You've noticed more aches and pains. Maybe your back's hurting more, sciatica is bothering you. If you have arthritis, it's really ramped up how it's impacting you. And so if this is you in the last 6 months or so, put a P on the right, and on the left, put an X. Flare-ups of chronic conditions. Any chronic condition. And I know I mentioned arthritis and back pain, but it could be anything. So something that was maybe under control, a chronic condition that was really under control. For any sort of chronic condition that is just you're having some sort of issue with. It could be acid reflux. It could be any kind of health condition that you felt like was pretty much under control, but it's flaring up. If you consider yourself to fall into that category in the last 6 months or so, P on the right and X on the left. Arguing a lot with others in either your personal life or your professional life. Just a lot more animosity, arguments. And if you feel this applies to you in the last 6 months or so, R on the right and X on the left. Reduce sexual activity. And for whatever that means for you. And if you're not sexually active and this isn't something that was reduced, then obviously don't apply to you. But if you have noticed that there's been a reduction for your sexual activity, we want to put a P on the right and X on the left. Spending most of your time alone or only with other loved ones that are in the caregiving crew or the person that you love who has illnesses. So if you're spending most of your time by yourself or only with people that are involved in the caregiving, I want you to put an R on the right and an X on the left. Feel it just simply like you're unable to relax. Again, M on the right if you feel that that's applied to you in the last 6 months or so, and an X on the left if you feel that this sounds like you just can't relax. So you feel disconnected. If you have a spouse or a partner or a significant other and you feel like you're just disconnected. An R on the right and an X on the left. Okay, keep going. Do you feel that there's been an onset or an exacerbation of depressive symptoms? Feeling blue, suicidal ideation, feeling just down in the dumps? For some people, it can even be part of it, can be hard time making a decision or concentrating. And if you feel in the last 6 months or so that that's applied to you, put an M on the right, and on the left, we're going to put an X. Resent family or friends who are not caregivers. R on the right, X on the left. Regularly turning down social invitations that you'd really like to accept. You'd like to go to that party. You'd like to go to that book club, even if it's a virtual invitation. You'd love to go to take a walk with your neighbors who are walking, or a friend asks you to watch a game or basketball game or something like that. But you're turning down invitations that you'd like to accept. And if that is applying to you in the last 6 months or so, I want you to put an F on the right and an X on the left. Simply feeling out of balance. You just don't feel like you have your emotional balance. S on the right, X on the left. Often upset with other members of the caregiving crew. So if you're the one in charge, you're the captain, the primary caregiver, and maybe you're upset with those who are helping you out. Or maybe you're somebody who's a first mate or a doc hand, one of the secondary or tertiary caregivers, and you find yourself very irritated with other members that are first mates or doc hands, tertiary, secondary caregivers, or you're upset with the primary, the captain. And if that applies to you in the last 6 months or so, let's go R to the right and X to the left. Haven't gone on vacation during this time frame of caregiving. Now, when I say vacation, I know a lot of people have been uncomfortable going on any vacation because of COVID. But if you haven't done anything, taken any time off from work, caregiving, day trip, overnight, I'm not necessarily saying it's got to be a cruise or a big week-long vacation, but if you haven't taken any sort of day or a couple days of vacation time away from caregiving or work or both in the last 6 months or so, I want you to actually, gosh, I don't have a letter there. Sorry about that. I want you to give yourself an F. Kristen, please send me an email. I got to fix this slide. So I want you to put an F on the right-hand side, and I want you to put an X on the left-hand side, if this applies to you in the last 6 months or so. Flare-ups of a mental health condition other than an anxiety disorder or depression. So maybe you're somebody that has, say, bipolar disorder, and it's been pretty under control. M on the right-hand side, if this applies to you, and X on the left, if you had it pretty under control with your counseling, with your medicine, or any other mental health condition besides an anxiety disorder or depression. Eating poorly. And I know that that's to a certain extent subjective, but if you feel for yourself you haven't been eating as well as you would like to be, or should, I know that's a loaded word, but I want you to put a P on the right and an X on the left. And this is, again, if you've felt that you've been eating poorly in like the last 6 months or so. Not exercising, or if you've really, really limited your exercising or stopped, or really just not as much exercise. So P on the right and X on the left, if this applies to you in the last 6 months or so. Haven't participated in a hobby you enjoy lately for about the last 6 months. That could be anything. It could be doing fantasy football in the last football season. It could be golfing in the last 6 months. It could be book club with friends. It could be online chess. It could be really anything that you consider a hobby that you enjoy. It could be reading, something just a solitary hobby. You really enjoy reading, but you haven't done it really very much in the last 6 months. And if that applies to you for a hobby that you like, that you've been not doing, I want you to put an F on the right and an X on the left. Missing your own doctor's appointments. So you're not going to, you've missed or keep rescheduling your dentist, your doctor, your mammogram, whatever, your eye doctor, whatever appointment that you feel that you should have been going to, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, but if it's a P, if this is you for the last 6 months, and an X on the right. Spending more money on your loved one that your spouse and or partner is not comfortable with. Like maybe you're paying for the person that needs care to have home care, and you're putting more money into it than your spouse or partner are comfortable with. Or maybe you're buying their groceries and it's more money than you and your spouse and partner have agreed upon. And again, that would be a dollar sign. A dollar sign would be to the right, and on the left, you would put an X. Spending more money on your loved one that you and your spouse have not agreed with, which we just talked about that one. I'm sorry, a dollar sign would be on the right, and on the left, the X. So missing appointments with your mental health provider or psychotherapist if you have one, but you've stopped going or you're canceling at the last minute. And if that applies to you, an M on the right and an X on the left. Not taking your medicine as directed. And that would be a P on the right, X on the left. If you take medicine. Left your workplace for caregiving despite financial repercussions to yourself, your spouse, your partner, your kids. So a dollar sign on the right, if that applies to you in the last 6 months or so, and on the left-hand side, an X. Borrowing from your retirement to take care of your older loved one. Dollar sign on the right, and on the left, an X, if that applies to you in the last 6 months or so. Missing religious services, S. So that would be on the right. So, and this is whatever it means to you, whether it's temple or synagogue or church or any type of organized religion. If that was something you do and you're not doing it anymore, I want you to put an S on the right and an X on the left. Spending more money than you can comfortably afford on items or services for your older loved one, whatever that might mean for you. You know that you can't afford it, but you're doing it. So dollar sign on the right and on the left, an X, if that applies to you in the last 6 months or so. So this is not about religious services so much as it's about making time for prayer, meditation, yoga. If this is something that's important to you, and if this is something that one of these are important to you, some spiritual renewal, personal, individual, spiritual renewal, if this is something you're not making time for in the last 6 months, I want you to put an S on the right and an X on the left. If you believe in God and you feel anger toward God in the last 6 months, an S on the right and an X on the left. Not spending time in nature if that's something that's important to you. Some people don't care about that, but some people do. And if this is something that's important to you, and you're not doing it, I want you to put an S on the right and an X on the left. So now what I would invite everybody to do is put in the chat section, how many total items resonated with you? So how many X's did you give yourself? So now it's time to talk about what your results are and what do you do about your results? 12, okay? Thanks, Kara. 9. How many X's did you have on the left-hand side? 20. Okay, thanks, Linda. 17, Angela, thank you. Keep writing in your numbers and feel free to share however many X's that you got. 22 for Melissa, 19 for Rachel, 18 for Tom, Carolyn, 5 X's, okay. 18 for Joy. And for the areas where for those of you who have more than 5 checks, which is most people, Katie is saying 13, you are probably in Martyr syndrome. You're probably a bit too selfless, maybe a lot too selfless. How many people say, that sounds right. I think I might be in Martyr syndrome. Or if anybody has any other thoughts? How many people say, yeah, I would say I'm in Martyr syndrome? Tom, Angela, yep. Rachel, Melissa, yeah, okay. I think people that come to this event that are attracted to this topic oftentimes have a gut feeling they kind of know, or maybe somebody's told them, you are not taking good care of yourself. So what I want you to do is add up the other areas. So the right-hand column, how many dollar signs did you have? How many F's did you have? How many M's? How many P's? How many R's? How many S's? And if you want to share which one was on the higher side, and of course, yeah, Carolyn's saying yes, she agrees. So if you would like to share, but the reason I want you to look at the $, the F, the M, the P, the R, S is just to see if there's a trend. Is there a trend? Now, if you didn't check off any of the $signs or none of the R's, then it's probable that your relationships are fine or your financial situation is fine. But if you checked off 6 and you put 6 relationships, 6 R's apply to you, that's probably an area that you want to try to rebuild, to reconnect with people that are important to you. Or if you have a 5 in S for spiritual, that's an area that you probably want to invest some time and energy to boost your spiritual your spiritual needs. And the thing about our lives is our lives are like a pie, and we have a financial piece, a social or fun piece, a mental health piece, a physical health, a spiritual part, a relational part. And if you're in martyr syndrome, I want you to really be thinking about, and I know for a lot of people, it might be the physical, it might be the mental health, but everybody's different. Some of you might find that you're neglecting all the areas of your life. And so this is just a test for today. And again, if you go to cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, you can download these worksheets, use them again in a week or in a month. This particular one, this is the Martyr Syndrome worksheet. This particular one is a snapshot of where you are today. And I want to tell you that you are the only person who can lower your score and get to a 5 or below if you're not there. So you don't have to answer this, but if you want, I want to feel free to write in the chat section. Who's in martyr syndrome? Is it you? Is it one of your, and some people, I call it caregiving crew. Is it one of your teammates? If it's you and your husband and your brother-in-law taking care of your father-in-law, is it your husband or your brother-in-law? Is it C? Nobody yet, but I think somebody or I am kind of close, or nobody. You're doing really, really well. So tell us in the chat section, which one would you pick for you and your caregiving team or caregiving crew? Who's in martyr syndrome? A and B. That's what I keep getting, A and B. Oh, Rachel's saying nobody helps me. They're way too busy. Me. Okay. So let's talk about how do we dig out of that? Do you need to course correct? And if you are identifying yourself as being in martyr syndrome, I'm telling you, you need to course correct, because this is impacting your physical health, your financial health, your mental health, your spiritual health, the fun in your life, the joy. And you really are the only one that has the power to say, I need to do something different. Now, Rachel, a lot of people, Rachel's saying friends help, but family is overwhelmed. There's an exercise that I want you to look at. And if you do the free book and from Brightview Senior Living, I know Kristen's going to keep putting that link in. You'll come to your house, the hard copy will come to your house. And also if you download the worksheet, the med exercise is an exercise for how to determine who else in your life can help. Friends, family, neighbors, people from your faith community. But also, do you need maybe to course correct? If your loved one lives with you, is it time that you look at a community? Is it time that you look at talking to Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging about what possible services they could help you with? Is it possible that you might need to bring some help, a home care aide into your home? there are options for, that's great. Okay, Rachel's saying my church, my neighbors, my friends do help. So it might be, Rachel, time to look at what other services outside of friends, family, neighbors can help. What else can help? Is it the Area Agency on Aging? Is it the Alzheimer's Association? Or if your loved one has a dementia? Or are there services if your loved one has heart disease, that the American Heart Association can help you? But it's really crucial to know that if you find yourself, like we talked about, at a 10, that you're at Martyr syndrome, or an 8, you're the only one that can start to take some steps to pull that number down and pull that number back. If you're in Martyr syndrome, acknowledge it to the people in your caregiving crew. Commit to one thing immediately you need to pull yourself out of. I've seen a lot of caregivers that they're doing all the caregiving, they're still working a job, and they also feel like they have to volunteer at their child's school, or they have to volunteer at church. Maybe that's an area you need to pull back. Maybe right now is the time where you got to put a lot of hours into your caregiving and your job, but maybe it's something that, like volunteer work, that you want to pull back from, or something. Maybe we talked about in the assessment, we talked about the idea of going to events, missing events, social events that you really want to go to. Well, what if you're the kind of person that's going to social events you do not want to go to? Maybe you're going to parties or events that you have no interest. It's not renewing you. It's not making you feel good. It's just one more commitment. So maybe that's something you pull away from this week. Connect with organizations that can help you. And I know most of you here today are working with, or your area agency on aging would be Loudoun County. But if you're not, you can go to n4a.org and plug in your zip code, and you can get, if you're in a different geographic area besides Loudoun County, maybe you need to hire a care manager, aginglifecare.org. We talked about the Alzheimer's Association. Remember, you need to give yourself a permission to be an imperfect caregiver, an imperfect caregiver. You're not supposed to be perfect. So I've got a couple comments that I think really need to be addressed. Melissa says, my mom doesn't want anyone else to help her except my sister and me. Here's the thing, Melissa. I'm curious if you can tell me a little bit about what's going on with your mom, if there's, like, how long you've been caregiving, what her diagnoses are, if you feel comfortable. Distillery Creative says, I need help. I'm the only one helping my live-in 96-year-old mom. Reach out to my church, haven't found help there. I work full-time, no siblings. I don't have any friends here. I moved here right before COVID to be near my children, who are both very busy with their families. Again, I'm going to say to Distillery Creative, consider that MET exercise that we talked about. But a lot of people, what Melissa said is resonating. Here's the thing. Oh, hey, Suzanne. Okay, here's the thing about that. I'm sure Erin is sitting on this program, and Erin, if you want to jump in, if you have any thoughts, feel free. If you want to write in, or you want to unmute yourself. But Erin and I, we've heard that a million times. The loved one does not want anybody else. Well, here's the thing. And if your loved one has dementia, there's one way to handle it versus if your loved one doesn't have dementia. But I'm going to assume your loved one doesn't have dementia. It's about setting a boundary, and it's about saying, Mom, we love you. And yes, my sister and I, we're going to be here. But here's what we can do, and here's what we can't do. We can only commit 5 hours a week, or 10 hours a week, or whatever that is. So other than that, and so I'm not saying that this is going to be a comfortable conversation, and I'm not saying it's going to be fun, but if your loved one doesn't have dementia and you can talk logically, listen, Mom, this is what our limits are. I'm going to give you an example. Yeah, Erin says, sometimes you need to try even though your loved one is hesitant. When my grandmother was sick, she had about 11 of us helping care for her, which I realize is very unusual. There's a lot, she was very fortunate to have a lot of family. And it got to the point where somebody was sleeping at her house every night. And my dad was, was the first one to hit a wall. And my dad said, he calls me up one day, because I was sort of the organizer of the schedule to a certain extent. And he says, I remember he called me up one morning and he says, I'm not sleeping over there anymore. And I said, okay, what happened? He said, I just can't do it. I'm exhausted. I am not sleeping well. I need to sleep at home. He's like, I'll take her to the doctor. I'll drop off food. I'll visit her. I'll do other things, but I'm not sleeping over there anymore. And my dad was the first one to put up a boundary. And then that really helped a lot of my aunts and my cousins say, okay, here's what we're willing to do. And here's what we can't do. And that was where the conversation began about home care. And then ultimately the conversation about senior living, because we were honest with her and we said, look, here's how much I can do. Here's how much this person can do. Here's how much, these are the items that we can do, but we're not going to be able to have somebody here with you 24 hours a day. Angela says, to recommit to myself, I'm concentrating on getting my house organized. I do jigsaw puzzles to relax, talk with family a lot. They send flowers to encourage me. I need to ask his friends and my nephews to call more often during the day when I'm working. Okay. Melissa says she moved. Okay, so Melissa's saying she moved. This is Melissa whose mom doesn't want help other than she and her sister. She just moved in with me in October after living with my brother for 16 years. She had a medical event that set her back and she needs help in the bathroom every 2 hours. My sister works crazy hours, so it's up to me. She had an amazing hired caregiver who she allowed to help, but we lost her about 6 weeks ago. Mom is willing to pay for someone to come, but we can't find anyone. I love resources because we are willing to get help. So I'm wondering what the holdup is in terms of finding another caregiver, another agency. And I am a big proponent of going through an agency that vets and criminal background checks, and there's tons and tons and tons of them. And that would be the route that I would recommend. And I'm sure that the Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging, Melissa, can help you with that. But I think it's really, I think you need to make that a priority. If it's just you and your sister, that I think that really needs to be a priority. Listen, years and years ago, when my grandma, she broke both of her shoulders. For 4 weeks, her doctor said, we need to immobilize you. You can't, this is when she was in her 60s. This was not the thing that happened when she was in her 80s, but 4 weeks, you can't use your hands, you can't use your arms, you can't use your wrists, elbows, nothing. Okay, so my 3 aunts and I committed that we were going to be with her 24 hours a day for 4 weeks. And we did it. And it was a lot. But we were like, it's only 4 weeks. Here's the thing. If it's a time limited situation, like somebody had a surgery or they had a treatment and we know it's going to be 3 months of care, 6 months of care, 4 weeks of care, what have you, you know, the time frame. For a lot of you, it'll be okay. It'll work. But if you don't know when the end is, if you don't know, this could go on for a year, 5 years, 10 years. It's up to you to take control of that situation and set your boundaries of what it is that you can do. Yeah, Rachel is saying that she's very disappointed that the teenage grandsons have not contacted your husband who's had knee replacement. You're shocked. Here's the thing, and with the MET exercise and increasing through caregiving, I talk about this concept a lot. There are going to be people that you do ask for help and they're going to say no, or they're just blow you off and they don't care. Maybe they don't care, but they don't know how to help. My question for you is, yes, there will be, or my comment is, people will disappoint you. Some people that you're expecting, maybe your best friend, you think she's going to help with my mom or she's going to help with my husband and she does nothing. But I believe when you put that energy out and you let it be known that you are accepting help, and it could be something like somebody drops dinners off. someone picks up the prescriptions, someone just, I think a couple of people wrote in that friends and family call just to check in on you or send you flowers. That's part of being the caregiving crew too. The other thing that I think is really important is we have to be very proactive with the grandsons. I don't know if you've tried this, maybe you have, but if you haven't, I would say, this is what I want you to do. Would you be willing to give your grandfather a call and talk to him for 5 minutes once a week? Would you be willing to stop by twice a month? Ask, or would you be willing to pick up a pizza one night and hang out with him while he watches the basketball game? What do you want them to do? And they might say no, or they might have different ideas of ways that they can contribute, but, and they might turn you down completely. But I think being really specific with your asks can help, especially for younger people. I know it hurts and I know it's disappointing, but a lot of times people don't anticipate what we want. You've done that. Okay, Rachel, then I think what you have to do is have your mind and heart open that there will be other people that rise to the occasion. Do that MET exercise in Cruising Through Caregiving, or download the hard copy of that. If you're in Martyr syndrome, what do you want to change? Do you want to start saying no to events and social functions that you feel like are obligations that you don't enjoy? Do you want to say, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym once a week and someone else is going to stay with my loved one? Am I going to look into interviewing a couple of home care agencies? What else are you going to change? Consider allowing friends and family to do more. And I can tell you again, the MET exercise will help you. If you feel like, all right, we're exhausted, I don't have enough people, consider doing that exercise. Bring paid help. Utilize adult daycare. Adult daycare is one of the best deals out there. And I know that Erin and the team at Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging can help you with that if you want to look into adult day. Consider moving to senior living or nursing home. Those can be options as well. If you are, actually, I'm going to just stop. Is there anybody on here that observes, yep, Erin's saying 3 adult day centers in Loudoun County. It's the greatest, I think it's the greatest bang for your buck. So I want to just, before I spend any time on this, is there anybody here that thinks someone else is in the Martyr syndrome, not them? It's not you, but it's somebody else in your friend, in your caregiving crew. Anybody else have that? Anybody else have, okay. So I'm just real quickly going to tell you, if you have somebody in your life, somebody's Karen saying my dad, some things to try, ask them, if you're in the hospital for a week, what happens to, I'm guessing it's the other parent, maybe it's your mom. Offer help they're most likely to accept. So I'm going to give you an example. I have a neighbor who's doing a caregiving situation right now, and I will offer her, they like soup. My husband makes a lot of soup. Hey, we're making this kind of soup. You want some? There's a dinner, or at least part of a dinner or a lunch. Can we order you DoorDash? We're ordering DoorDash for us tonight. She'll let us do that sometimes. And I'm not saying, let me clean your house, or we're not like super close friends, but she's a neighbor and I want to be there. But if you are on the outside and you're seeing someone in Martyr syndrome, try to examine like what might they let there be you help with. Like, can you pay for someone to shovel for them? If we get snow again, we might be past the snow period in the mid-Atlantic. Let's hope. We got a couple good ones. Point out observations with love. I'm gonna back up. Point out observations with love. I've noticed that you seem like you haven't had a day out of the house in the last 3 months. Be specific, or I noticed you mentioned that you rescheduled your eye doctor appointment, your dentist appointment, your dermatology appointment. I think it would be great for you to reschedule those. Maybe I could stay, or maybe we could bring an aide in to stay with your loved one. Consider, be persistent with your offers of help. Consider involving an authority figure like maybe a religious or spiritual leader, or maybe the family, whoever's an authority figure in that family. If you are observing true abuse or neglect, and I know here with the Area Agency on Aging, I know Erin can help with connecting you with the adult protective services in your area, because sometimes people are in martyr syndrome and they lose their patience and they're not setting out to harm their loved one, but it does happen. It's not intentional, but they're losing their patience and they pull their loved one's arm too hard, or they forget to feed them or forget to give them the medicine. Adult protective services can be a great resource if you see that with somebody in martyr syndrome. We have a couple of, I just want to see what the comments are here. Yep, Aaron's saying, feel free to send an email to aaa.support@loudoun.gov or call 703-777-0257. That's a great place to wrap up. We have a couple of moments if anybody has any last comments or last questions. But please know, wherever you are today, even if it feels impossible, like there's no way I can do something different, I promise that you can. It might not be your first choice. It might not be that you really want strangers in your house. It may not be that you really want your mom to be at an adult day, or you really don't want to move your husband into senior living. But I think it's important for family caregivers to have all the options on the table and talk about the pros and cons and the risk reward of all the options. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. There's lots of ways to be a good, loving caregiver, but you don't have to be in martyr syndrome to do it. Thank you all so very much. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And turn it back over to Kristen. Sorry.
Thank you again to Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging for sponsoring today's program. And please do utilize the contact information that I'm about to drop in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the week. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.